Welcome to Thanksgiving week, Ohio State, Michigan week, and the pick show on the podcast. Doug Lesmerises, Austin Ward, Bill Landis here to give you our picks for this 2 versus 3 show.
Doug, I think you should start by talking about how much your opinion of this game has changed over the last month. I'm going to rattle you right off the bat.
I just Berm's in here talking with us before the Berm's all fired up to the now. Ooh, you're feeling the juices. Only the 4th time that this is a both teams ranked in the top 3 for this game. And I will say that my thinking has certainly evolved on this game over the course of the season. And we talked about it. Bill and I did a little bit on our gigantic breakdown on Kings of Columbus. The cheating scandal has affected my view. I do think that's had some negative influence on Michigan, and the Ohio State run game, the development of that, the explosiveness of TreVeyon Henderson has affected my view. Austin, do you feel like your view of this game has shifted very much from where you were in September or October, or have you kind of felt like, no, I got a handle on this thing the whole way through?
I don't know that it's changed dramatically. I think what's altered my perception is like trying to understand the results from the previous 2 years. That has changed a lot, and I don't like it because I feel like I covered a lie and have talked about toughness and running game and Jim Knowles' defense like in a way that may or may not have been true. I don't know. I'm not saying it definitively altered the outcome, but it taints it in my mind, and that part I don't like. So that part, when looking at this matchup, I think has changed a little bit because I'm not sure that Michigan did enough things to like absolutely prove that they had solved the Ohio State problem in a way that was within, the boundaries of the rules and within the white lines. So I thought Ohio State had the better personnel than Michigan from day one this season. I thought they would have their hands full going on the road. I still think that's true, but I do think that there's maybe a bigger opportunity for Ohio State to deliver a message and perhaps win more decisively than I would have thought 2 months ago.
Bill, do you feel like you've been a straight line or a squiggly line in your evaluation?
I think mostly a straight line. It's always been a little bit of a coin flip for me that I think more often than not, I thought Ohio State would be on the right side of. Maybe I've gone back and forth a little bit throughout the course of the year. When we saw Ohio State's offense sputtering a little bit, and we saw Michigan just kind of beating up bad teams. But I didn't want to make too much of either of those things. I agree with Austin, right? Like I've always thought that Ohio State has the better personnel. They recruit better. They should have the better personnel. But I still think Michigan's good. Like even with all the sign stealing stuff and like how much did it actually impact the last 2 years and how much of their success should we attribute to that? I'm not sure. Some, I think, but how much I don't know. But I still think Michigan has good players, and it's still a well-coached team. And even if they used ill-gotten gains to flip this rivalry, I still think the mental impact of doing that and believing you can beat Ohio State if you're Michigan matters too. So like I've thought all along it's going to be a close game, and I still think it's going to be a close game.
Covering a lie. Austin Ward and my life in the game.
Yeah, it's going to be a whatever. If one of us writes a book, if there's a 30 for 30 and we get interviewed, I don't know. I mean, somebody's going to have to. There's going to be documentaries on Connor Stallions. There's going to be like, fictionalized versions that are made for movies. Like this is one of the most insane scandals and also dumbest in college football history, right?
Let's go to his house on Saturday. We're all going. We got time.
All you got to do is
there.
Hey, we're just looking for vacuums. Can you help us? We see you've got 50 of them on your porch. Are they for sale?
I feel like I might have seen that house. Like the vacuum house. I feel like I might have gone past there. So we're looking at a game. The total for this game is around 46. Michigan is favored by about 3.5. This line last Saturday, a week ago, before those games were played, was more like 5.5. So it has moved toward Ohio State to some degree. I have a couple little like historical numbers that I want to talk about for this game. First of all, this year against the spread, Michigan is 5-5-1 against the spread. Ohio State is 6-3-2 against the spread. From a total perspective, Michigan has gone over 6 times and under 5 times, and Ohio State has been living on the under. Only 2 overs for Ohio State this year, 9 unders. The history of this game, the Coop stuff is the Coop stuff. I don't think it's particularly applicable to what's happening right now. So starting with the first year of Jim Tressel, favorites are 16-5 in the game in the last 21 years. Ohio State is 14-2 as a favorite, which means they were 14-0, and now they're 0-2 because they were favored the last 2 years. Michigan is 2-3 as a favorite. So Michigan is favored this year. In the 5 games since 2001, when Michigan has been favored, in 2001, Michigan was favored by 8.5, and Ohio State won 26-20. In 2003, Michigan was favored by 7 and then won, pretty solidly. 2004, Michigan was favored by 4, and Ohio State won 37-21 as Troy Smith introduced himself in the game. 2011, the crazy chaos year for Ohio State, Michigan was favored by 8.5 and won by, I believe it was 6 at home, right? Fingertips, just over the fingertips of DeVere Posey, or Ohio State might have pulled that upset. And then 2018, Michigan is favored by 4.5, and Ohio State drops a bomb on them, 62-39. So again, this is only the 6th time that Michigan has been favored. And then from a perspective on the totals, the last 21 years, this game has gone over 16 times in the last 21 years, 9 straight overs, with the caveat that they were under in 2016 at the end of regulation. 17-17 tie was a solid under, and then it went over in the double overtime. So that, as we want to talk about game scripts and that kind of thing here, Austin, like the idea that, listen, a couple, like in 2021, the over under was like 58 points or something, and it went over, right? This is a much lower total here, but this game is a little more high scoring than people expect in general. Do you think that's possible with this one? Because statistically, these are arguably 2 of the 5 best, maybe the 2 best defenses in the country.
Yeah, I think that's sort of the way that championship matchups in college football work anymore. Even if you have elite defenses, you aren't generally going to shut down good offenses repeatedly from start to finish. Now, that's the challenge. Ohio State's been very, very good this year. Obviously, Michigan has a statistical defense and resume that's number 1 in the country right now. You would say on paper that there's a good chance that this could be super low scoring. But when you factor, I think of games like Alabama, Clemson in the playoff, like you wouldn't say that either of those defenses were incompetent. It's just that the standard for success in those games is different. You don't hold somebody to 10 points. That's your only chance of winning. You're hoping to get a turnover or 2, or a sack fumble that changes the game, or 2 or 3 stops to put your offense in position. And when you add that into the fact that crazy things happen in rivalry games, and like it's hard to execute from start to finish and have that attention to detail and make every tackle, and when the pressure is building, you see some things happen in these games that tend towards the over, because it's much easier, I think, to take advantage of a mistake going the other way against the defense than conversely a defense just shutting somebody down for 60 whole minutes. So I think that's why you see that historical record in the game. Both teams are also keeping a ton of stuff in reserve, not just Ohio State, not just Ryan Day. We've seen this with misdirection and different, counters and screens and things from Michigan in years past, even in games that they've lost. Like both teams have new stuff that they will unveil on offense that keeps you off balance and makes you adjust over the course of a game. So I think that's probably why we've seen that, probably why I'm leaning towards going over as well.
I do think that is a compelling case for maybe a higher scoring game than you would expect. Now let's make the case for a lower scoring game. Landis, in stop rate, right, which is when you stop the opposing offense on a drive, you force them either to punt, to turn the ball over, or they are stopped on downs. Michigan is first in the nation in that category. They do that 83.5% of the time. Ohio State is second. They do it 82% of the time. Excellent in terms of like, we might let you move the ball a little bit, but we're not going to let you score. And then I looked at, like, I think right? The four most competitive games for these two teams this year: Ohio State, Penn State, the total was 45. The final score was 20-12. That's a 32 total. It's way under. Michigan, Penn State, the total was 45. The final score was 24-15. The total is 39. That's under. Ohio State, Notre Dame, the total was 55. The final score was 17-14. Way under.
Mm-hmm.
Ohio State, Wisconsin, the total's 45.5. The final score is 24-10. It's 34, also significantly under. So in the Big Ten, right, the Big Ten has like the four top teams in stop rate or something. The Big Ten plays defense, and sometimes the offenses are not very good. I do think when you look at the Michigan-Penn State game and the Ohio State-Penn State game, you have to factor in, what's the word I would say? Incompetence from the Penn State offense. They fired their offensive coordinator. So I don't think that's not the case here with either offense. But this is when these teams have played good opponents, it has been grinded out defensive games.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a case for thinking, well, maybe that's what this is going to be.
Yeah, I think you're right. And like this number, you can hit this number without a shootout, right? 27-20 is not a shootout, but you're still over if in this game, if that happens. I had all those games in mind when I was trying to figure out how I think this might go, what I think ultimately the final score and total will be. And even then, well, you'll see in a minute, like I ended up a little higher for my pick here than any of those games you mentioned finished. But I think like in the context of this game, which has, to your point, been higher scoring historically than people expect, I still think it's on the lower end. I think it's like right around the number. I don't think like anything more than 5 touchdowns for each team. The one thing that gives me a little pause with that is the Ohio State side of things, right? If Notre Dame, they're stopped on 4th and 1 on the goal line, they have a touchdown pass go off of someone's hands in the end zone, right? It's not that Ohio State couldn't move the ball in that game. It's just they couldn't finish drives. Similar for Penn State. I think Ohio State in those two games combined had 7 red zone trips and 2 touchdowns. So there's an opportunity here for it to just kind of click and for Ohio State to finish those drives the way that Ryan Day wants them to, which would make me a little nervous if I was considering an under here. But I think there's enough track record with both of these teams and the way their biggest games have gone that it probably makes sense to err on the lower side because of the two ways the teams are willing to play, which is run the ball and play defense.
As we record this on Wednesday, not a ton of national picks out there yet. You know, people are getting their thoughts together. USA Today has their picks out. They're 6 people, 4-2 for Ohio State. A little more analytical. Brian Fremo, the FEI ratings, which we like. Ohio State is first in defense in those ratings. Michigan is second in defense. Ohio State is 13th in offense. Michigan is 3rd in offense. And they overall are just like super highly rated in general. Michigan is 1 and Ohio State is 3 with Oregon wedged in between. But as close as that is, his numbers give Michigan a 69% chance of winning. His projected final score is 27-19 Michigan. I also want to take this into account. I double checked, you write stuff down, you do picks. It lives on the internet forever. I have picked Ohio State each of the last 2 years. As it turned out, I was very close on the final score in both games. I just was flipped both times. So then I guess that makes you not very close when you think Ohio State's going to win by 15 and then Michigan wins by 15. That's being wrong by 30 points. So Austin, there's a part of me that's like, okay, well, I think Michigan's really good. I certainly think Ohio State has a great chance in this game, but also am I going to be like in a world where, well, Michigan's won 7 straight and I picked Ohio State every time. Like, I don't like as we're trying to think about what's going to happen, but also trying to think about what we thought was going to happen before. You know what I mean? Like, you have to check yourself a little bit of like, why? I don't know what you picked. What did you pick the last 2 years? And then are you trying to think to yourself, well, this is what I thought. How right or wrong was I when that happened?
I picked Ohio State to win comfortably each of the last 2 years. And largely my rationale was I'm not ever going to pick Michigan until they prove that they can win, because I had never covered a game where Michigan won the game. And I had seen those blowouts, and I knew what was going to happen in 2020 when it was the largest spread in the history of the series, and then Michigan wasn't able to play and we didn't get to see it. All of that was in my mind, and I did not see 2021 coming at all. And I was really surprised at what happened in the second half for a second year in a row in 2022 without even knowing any of the other factors that were involved. Like, that doesn't matter. They played the game, they lost it. They had opportunities to build a much larger lead in the first half, and maybe that wouldn't have mattered. So like, you guys are both correct when you say Michigan has good players. I think Ohio State has better players overall. That's what, leads me to this. And I'm also trying to, like, those numbers that you mentioned and a score projection, like the computer models, like that's all well and good. I don't argue with them. They're very useful and informative. I think there is in the game an intangible part that we won't know for sure until Saturday at noon, but the level of anger that Ohio State is feeling, the motivation that their more veteran players now have without gold pants, the talent factoring into that as well. I just, going on the road, this team's been very, united and tighter when they go on the road, and brotherly bonds and all that stuff. I do think that matters in this game, maybe more than like playing against Wisconsin. And I think the opposite is true for Michigan when you remove their coach, when you don't have, some of the same advantages that you've grown accustomed to. They've not looked like the same team for the last month. Like, that's an objective fact, I believe. I mean, at least to me. So that makes it sound like it's an opinion, but they're not playing at the same level that they have for the last 4 weeks. Like, that's clear. I think all those things in terms of the intangibles point towards Ohio State. And that does also weigh on my mind for this one. But as you said, I've been wrong the last 2 years.
Are you factoring that in, Landis? Are you trying to like check yourself and check your thought process the past couple of years as you think about this one?
Yeah, I think so. I picked Ohio State big last year. I think because of the Blake Corum injury, I think was in my head at the time. And clearly that was wrong, for whatever reasons. It was wrong. So I've tried to think about it a little differently. But like, while still, like, I want to be respectful, I guess, right? That's the word of the week, to the fact that like Michigan still has good players, right? Like, it's not, I do kind of dismiss their success the last 2 years because I don't know what to make of it, but I can still watch them play games and see how good their players are and come away impressed with their personnel and think that they're perfectly capable of giving Ohio State a good game when all things are equal. So, but yeah, it's been like, I've been wrong the last 2 years picking Ohio State to win this game, and it's kind of hard for me to wrap my mind around why exactly that was. So I tried to keep that in mind as I, form my thoughts here.
All right, let's do it then. Austin Ward, you are up. What is your pick for the game?
So again, if you are going to put American currency or whatever currency, for whatever country you might live in on this game, try and find the best possible odds, because the over total was as low as 45.5 on Wednesday morning at FanDuel. That informed my initial prediction, which I think was pretty accurate. I had 30-16. We decided to go with 46 officially on the pick show this week. So I took one extra point for Ohio State. How are they going to get there? I don't know, because that didn't fit into the way I initially wanted it to, but I do think the game is over. Well, I wanted to make sure that was reflected in my final score, because I think, Doug, that there is a better chance of Ohio State pulling away and winning comfortably over Michigan than the opposite. Now, we've seen that from the Wolverines in the second half of the last 2 years. I'm not saying that to dismiss their level of talent or the fact that they might get momentum and get things rolling in the second half, but I think Ohio State's defense is playing at a level that we've not seen in a long time. And if the red zone execution that Bill talked about earlier starts to connect a little bit, I think that there's an opportunity for Ohio State to go beyond 31. And I would rather err on that side. I think they're going to cover, and I think that it's going over. And I think Ohio State gets this monkey off of its back on Saturday.
Again, using 46 as a total. Austin slightly over. Ohio State a 3.5 point underdog. Landis, what you got?
I'm taking Ohio State 28-20. I think I'm in agreement with Austin on the possibility that Ohio State goes a little higher here. If you watch Michigan's offense this year, I just don't know that I see one that is capable of hitting the big plays with consistency like it did last year against Ohio State's defense. And obviously the way Ohio State's defense is played is part of that too. I would just be like shocked, maybe as shocked as I've ever been covering this team if suddenly Ohio State's defense starts giving up big plays, because it just has not done it all year. And in its biggest games, Notre Dame and Penn State, I think it's been kind of even better in those games than it has been kind of on the average for the year. Now, you mentioned Doug, Penn State's offense stinks, so that plays a part in it. But I just think they've been pretty dialed in on defense for every game they've been in. There's not really been much in the way of slippage or things that I think worry you. So I think you see a really good game from Ohio State's defense that keeps Michigan from pouring in a lot of points. Like I think it's 2 touchdowns and a couple field goals for Michigan, because I do wonder about Sharon Moore and like how aggressive he might actually be in a game like this. If he's pressed with the decision between a field goal and a touchdown, maybe he errs on the side of the field goal because he's a little inexperienced and plays it a little close to the vest. And I think Ohio State's explosive potential with Travion Henderson, with Marvin Harrison Jr., is the difference for them to win by a touchdown-ish here in this game and for the game to go over.
And I'm right in the same range. 28-23, a little bit closer. We're all picking Ohio State to win. We're all picking the over. I do think, Sharon Moore talked this week about the idea of making sure he knows from Jim Harbaugh what Jim Harbaugh wants to have happen in this game. And so there's a lot of that you can plan ahead. But there are moments, I think, especially in a game like this, where there maybe you would feel something that if Harbaugh is saying, hey, let's rely on our defense, our general plan is we're not going to go for it on 4th down unless we're inside the 25 and it's, 4th and 2 or shorter. But maybe in the moment, the game's going a certain way. And if Harbaugh's on the sideline there at midfield on 4th and 3, he says, we're going for it. You know what I mean? And I don't like Sharon Moore, I don't think can read the momentum maybe and pull that trigger in the same way that a guy who's in charge of the program can. So I do think that can matter in this game. But mostly this is about the Ohio State secondary. I just don't think they'll make the same mistakes they made last year. And then you add in Ohio State's explosive offensive potential. I do think Michigan will drive on them at times. Again, like Jim Knowles is kind of okay with that. And so I do think there will be times when Michigan can be a machine and will march. But even with that, I think it's still over. I don't, as much as I kind of brought up like, hey, Notre Dame, Ohio State was 17-14 and Ohio State, Penn State was 20-12. I don't think it's that. I don't think, Austin, that it is such a grind, as good as whatever the stats say about these defenses and whatever. I do think there's more defensive playmakers in this game, but I almost think like those defensive playmakers might help get this thing higher scoring, because I think Denzel Burke or Jordan Hancock or Mike Sainra still, or the Michigan defensive tackles could make plays that actually create points, Austin, by setting up short fields or maybe even getting a defensive score.
Yeah, and I think that like Notre Dame and Penn State are the most valuable data points that we have to evaluate Ohio State at this point. But there is, I think, a key difference for this Saturday compared to those two. That's game number 4, and it's on the road for Kyle McCord against Notre Dame. There were opportunities to make bigger plays, certainly to throw to Emeka Egbuka in the end zone. Like that game probably should have had 14 more points at least for Ohio State in it. So that's a little bit of the inexperience, and then surviving a slugfest on the road against a top 10 opponent or a team that was at the top 10 then. Penn State is different because you are removing Emeka Egbuka from the equation. You don't have Travion Henderson, and those 1A and 1B are huge deals for Ohio State's offense overall. So, yeah, your point was about a defense making plays, and I think that's relevant. But I think even if they do, like Ohio State's offense is just quite simply different than those previous two that were under and tighter games than maybe they even should have been.
Against the spread the last 21 years, Ohio State is 13-8. Michigan then 8-13. Although this is one of those things. I mean, this is a show where we talk about gambling. Can we find like the Ohio State fan is like, oh man, I took the Buckeyes. They lost, but at least they covered.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I got 3.5. They lost 23-21 on a last second field goal. At least I cashed my bet as my life was ruined.
Here's what I think, Doug. I find it very unlikely that any Ohio State fans who watch the pick show like what we've done and also then follow up by using their own American currency are doing anything other than taking the Ohio State money line. Because there's no way that they're accepting like a 3-point loss in the game. Like They would rather not have that money. I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it. Tell me if I'm wrong. Text us if I'm wrong. But I'm sure you're just on the money line.
Because betting should make you happy.
That's right.
It should make you happy more than it should make you money. To cash a bet, Austin's like, disagree. Wrong. To cash a bet.
Wait, what are those numbers underneath you guys' faces over there? Let me know.
That's why I'm so happy to be down $105. Look at this face. This is the face of a happy loser. And Austin's just like, cash. He's a machine. So just drop a little something on the Ohio State money line. It certainly is a reasonable bet. We're all picking it.
Yeah.
But just, watch the game and have a good time. Again, listen to Austin Ward. Overall, Austin is much more successful than us this season. He is 13-9 overall on his Ohio State bets, spread and totals combined. Landis, you and I are 9-13, which, considering where we've been at times, is not that terrible.
No, we were cruising for an over there. I think at least I was for a little bit. So I'm happy to be 9-13.
Yeah, look at us, the happy losers. Maybe we'll change Kings of Columbus to the happy losers. And Austin's show is just called Cash That Bet.
Cash it.
All right. When we come back, we're making some Ohio State props next on the Pick Show on the podcast. Time for props, but first, Landis, on this Thanksgiving week, a brief moment of human emotion. Brought to you by Philly Billy.
Well, it's not brought to you by me. It's brought to us by Charles Pruder, who's a tech subscriber of ours, responding to what Denzel Burke said this week about wanting to win this game for the state of Ohio. We talked a little bit about this on Kings of Columbus, Doug, like the emotion involved with this, and that goes kind of beyond just football. But I thought this was a nice message from Charles. He writes, I grew up in Northeast Ohio and graduated from the Ohio State University, but I left Ohio for my career and won't ever move back. I love my family and I love where we live, but there's a never ceasing dull pain in my gut. I feel like I abandoned my home a little bit. But when I hear people like Ryan Day and Denzel Burke, who came from the outside to Ohio, talk about doing things for the state, it's almost like they took up the flag for me and they're saying, quote, I'm here, I got you, no matter where you are now. Brings me to tears a little bit, feeling connected like that to the team. And then he wrote in all caps, we're from Ohio.
Oh my gosh, that's so nice. It's a good trade. Denzel for Charles. Works out for everybody.
Yeah, I'm just going to guess that Denzel's a better cornerback.
No offense to Charles, but Charles said he's happy where he is.
That's right.
And Denzel's going to lock down Cornelius Johnson. So it's all good.
I think that's the other. I think that is an interesting part. I talked about the intangibles before the pick, Doug. Like this team, if there was complacency that crept in 2021, that's long gone. I mean, there's so few people on this team that have won gold pants. They need to do it. Like Denzel could leave, Marvin could leave, Emeka could leave. They could never have won in the game, and that doesn't guarantee that they're going to win on Saturday. But that sort of hunger and motivation to fix it, I think, is largely what helped the 2021 Michigan team pull off that upset in Ann Arbor. And then when you look at some of the numbers, like Ohio State is very rarely a true underdog according to the Vegas line. And they often, pull that out because they just don't get the chance to say nobody believes in us, because almost every other week, everyone believes in them to win. You have that part. You have the America's team part where they're actually pulling for Ohio State because they are embarrassed by what Michigan has done to football with Connor Stallions. Like, I mean, maybe it's all setting up, like too many things are in Ohio State's favor, but it just like everything gives them something that I think can propel them on Saturday.
Yeah, no, I do think that is real. I do think like over time, Michigan had a really hard time handling the intangibles while they were losing, right? I thought like they came in as a favorite in 2018 and were trying to handle the intangibles and like got in their own head in a way that I think affected them on the football field. So there are a lot of things. I do think like to be a true underdog, like a real underdog, is that they are not in that position a lot. I think they do enjoy that. And then it's just a matter of, does it motivate you? Does it help you? Or does it get inside your head and wrap you up in a way that like you can't be yourself? So it felt like a good headspace, like just our perception of them as they talked about it Tuesday. All right, time for props. They did get the props out early, so we had a decent smorgasbord, a buffet, if you will, of Austin. Your choice. Betting buffet, Thanksgiving buffet. You can only take one. It's either props or sides. Actually, we should have a draft because everyone drafts Thanksgiving sides. Should have a combined props and sides. And so it's like sweet potatoes, Cade Stover anytime touchdown, mashed potatoes, Marv 2 touchdowns, right? Like that's that kind of thing. It's like, oh man, stuffing versus trivia on anytime touchdown. I can't decide.
I can't
Brian,
believe
can we
you
go
won't
like
sleep
an
at
hour
those
and a half
over
on this? If we throw that in, we'll go on that.
I can't believe that you don't know how I'm.
We can go as long as you guys want, as long as we're talking about Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah.
I can't believe that you think that this would be hard for me. I'm like not even allowed to have. I shouldn't say allowed. I won't be, by my choice, having a full Thanksgiving buffet, and I love to gamble. So you guys can just draft all you want. I can't have mashed potatoes this year. I can't have, gravy. I can't have all the things that I normally would love. No desserts. So I'm going to drink beer and I'm going to bet. And that is my draft. So whatever. You guys can just go through the food. It's all yours.
Honey, could you pass the Cade Stover anytime touchdown, please? I'd like a second helping of that.
Oh, who made the one that's plus 225? Oh, that was DraftKings. DraftKings, you cooked up a beauty this year. Thank you.
You have gorged yourself on Brian Ferentz this year, by the way, young man. It's like, that
was the most unhealthy thing that I was doing to my body.
Is there any Iowa money lines left? No, Austin ate all the Iowa money lines. He's so fat and happy.
Yeah.
All right.
That was the appetizer. He had all the Hawkeyes. Sorry, everyone. Not sorry. My bank account. Well, we'll talk about that.
Yeah. All right, Austin, what do you got for your Ohio State props this week?
I could not believe we were sitting in the Woody on Tuesday and we're like, are the props out yet? Are the props out yet? Yeah, there they are. And I saw Cade right away at plus 225 to score a touchdown. And I was like, well, thank you very much. Since he's got back, touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. He has a touchdown in 5 of the last 6 games. One of those was the Wisconsin game where he could barely move and he was out there as a decoy. When I talk about players that are highly, highly motivated for this game, you have to start with Cade Stover. A captain, did not score in the game last year, had 4 catches, was pretty ineffective overall, 4 catches for 13 yards. He grew up watching this rivalry. He's been entrusted with that leadership role, and he's also very, very important to Ohio State's offense. I think just to go a little bit deeper, if there's a world where Michigan's like, we got to put 2 guys on Marv, we can't let him win, and then, well, Emeka's back too, that's a problem, and then they start, trying to design some coverages to take away the wide receivers. I think Ohio State's been more than willing and capable of exploiting that in the middle of the field with Cade Stover. Kyle McCord trusts him in the red zone. I'll honestly be very surprised if Cade does not score in this game. Plus 225 seemed really, really good to me. And then he'll play a part in a quarterback SGP that plays in with both J.J. McCarthy and Kyle McCord. I have Kyle going over 233.5 yards and over 1.5 passing touchdowns. J.J. McCarthy under 204.5 yards and under 1.5 passing touchdowns for him. Kyle has gone over that yardage total in 9 of 11 games this year. He's gone over that. We talked earlier in the year about where the passing touchdowns were and kind of that slow start. He's now over 1.5 touchdowns in 8 of 11 starts this year. When you look at JJ, he's got 201 combined yards in the last 2 games. Like, that's insane. That would be under for this 1 game total. He hasn't thrown a touchdown in the last 3 games. So not sure how much of that is a schematic situation. We know that what they did in the second half against Penn State with only the 1 attempted throw that drew a pass interference flag, they're not doing anything. Michigan is not doing anything through the air in the last couple of weeks. Doug, you were talking about Ohio State's secondary and their improvement from last year to this year. I think that's significant. The only caveat I would have to throw in for Kyle McCord in that yardage total is that only 1 team this year has thrown for more than 200 yards against Michigan. And the flip side is that it was last week and Maryland threw for 247. So I like it. And I especially like plus 631 on FanDuel.
That's a nice, juicy, not food.
Yeah.
Nice, juicy.
I'm going to fill myself up on it.
What happened? We all kind of got smoked on the Ohio State bets last week, Landis, because we tied so much to Kyle McCord throwing at least 3 touchdowns, and he threw 2. As we're just trying to evaluate betting props on this, especially in the Ohio State passing game, is there anything to be learned from last week? And again, Austin's taken over 1.5 touchdowns, not over 2.5 touchdowns. What did we get wrong last week?
A couple missed throws in the end zone. I think like one that Cade Stover got tipped that probably very well could have been a touchdown if it didn't get tipped. He missed Julian Fleming in the end zone. Like he didn't throw the ball to him, and Ryan Day was pretty ticked off about it in the second half of that game. So like stuff like that, which has happened, I think, a couple of times throughout the year where there's something there that is potentially a bigger play, but Kyle might throw like an underneath route to somebody that's not even necessarily a check down. Like he did that last week. There's another play where Julian Fleming was wide open, but Kyle threw it to Xavier Johnson for like 15 yards instead of a 20-yard touchdown. It's like, I'm not going to fault him too much for that, but I do think those are the kind of things that can screw you up when you're making a play like this.
All right. So what do you got this week for us, Landis?
So I like the touchdown for Cade Stover on DraftKings too, but I wanted to parlay it with Colston Loveland, Michigan's tight end, scoring a touchdown as well, and I couldn't do that on DraftKings. You can do it on FanDuel. So, and Cade's odds are a little lower on FanDuel to score a touchdown than they were on DraftKings. So if you really like Cade, I would say go there. But if you're like me and you think both these guys are going to score and want to pair them together, I did it on FanDuel. So it's an anytime touchdown for Cade Stover. It's an anytime touchdown for Colston Loveland, who is Michigan's talented pass-catching tight end who had a 45-yard touchdown in this game last year. I think he has 4 on the season, so he's not like a prolific scorer, but I think with just how good Ohio State's cornerbacks are, I don't know that I see a whole lot of opportunity here for Michigan's receivers, and maybe there could be an opportunity or two for Colston Loveland if he gets matched up on a linebacker, or if like Sonny Styles is keyed in on the run, maybe he can sneak by Ohio State's defense for a touchdown. So I paired the two of them together, anytime touchdowns at plus 745. And then I took a tweaked version of Austin's quarterback parlay to give myself a little more juice here as I'm trying to put myself on the right side of history when we end this thing. So it's the same for JJ McCarthy, the under on the yardage of 204.5, the under on the touchdowns of 1.5. But I'm under on the yardage for Kyle McCord at 233.5, and I'm over on the touchdowns at 1.5. I think that the fact that Ohio State has not been able to hit a ton of shots in the passing game made me maybe think that an under for Kyle might be good here. Like Austin putting it out, like he has gone over this quite a bit, but I think Michigan's passing defense is pretty good. I think they might have an okay plan for Marvin Harrison Jr. to make sure he doesn't go completely insane. That does mean there'll be opportunities there for Kyle to spray it to some other guys, but I think a large chunk of what Ohio State does offensively is Travion Henderson, which brings down the passing total just a touch. But I can see Ohio State scoring via the pass in the red zone a couple of times too to make sure that touchdown over hits. So it is a different version of the quarterback double dip, but a little more juice there. Plus 1426.
Wow.
Man.
Odds. Yeah.
You are getting some great odds on the bets that you don't win.
That I almost win. The bets that I almost win.
Yeah. It's spectacular. Okay, I will say I stared at FanDuel alternate rushing yards. Travion Henderson over 150 rushing yards at plus 750. I took a peek at because I do think the idea of 2 high safeties, take Marv away, pretty good coverage, like, Mike Sainristil still on a Mecca in the slot, like some of that stuff. And okay, here comes 28 carries for Travion Henderson. And if 3 of those go for 20 yards plus, we're talking about, like a historic rushing total in the game. I can see that script a little bit, Austin, I like explosive, like workhorse Travion and explosive Travion, and over 150 for the rushing total doesn't seem impossible in my mind.
But you're telling me that it's not going to go to the top of the screen, and I'm not going to see that on your picks?
No, I wimped out.
Okay.
I went 0-5 last week. I'm wounded.
Yeah, he's playing it safe.
I'm suffering. So my first one, I mean, see that when Landis is wounded, he gets up and chases juice. And when I'm wounded, I just stay in a fetal position and take minus bets. Like this. Oh, Byrne made it a pun. Pass the corn, Elias. This is the perfect encapsulation of our Thanksgiving sides / prop bet draft.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
When you pass the Cornelius, does it come out the same way it went in?
Is that? We can cut that part out. Nobody wants to hear that on Thanksgiving. So this is Cornelius Johnson, the guy who had 2 gigantic touchdowns for Michigan last week. His over-under total on receiving yards in this game is 33.5. He's only had that many receiving yards in 2 of the Big Ten games that Michigan's played this year. And I just think Denzel Burke and Davison Igbignosin are going to be all over this dude. And I'm like looking at maybe a blank on this guy that I think like Roman Wilson still might get his in the slot for Michigan, and Colston Loveland at tight end, and Donovan Edwards out of the backfield. But this is minus 114. But I love this bet that the guy who destroyed them with 2 big plays gets almost nothing because Ohio State has come so far. So like that idea, I wanted to express that idea of them not allowing explosive plays in a bet. So I'll take Cornelius Johnson under 33.5 receiving yards at minus 114. And then on the idea that maybe Michigan's trying to take care of Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm in on like the return of Emeka Egbuka, who won the Notre Dame game for Ohio State. It's an Emeka is back parlay over 50.5 receiving yards plus an anytime touchdown at plus 312 on FanDuel. I am fascinated, Austin, to see like what Michigan tries to do to say we're not going to let Marvin Harrison Jr. win the game for Ohio State, and what Ohio State does to say, okay, well, we don't care what you're doing. We're going to get Marv the ball. Or, okay, he's not there. Bing, bang, boom. Here we go to the other guys.
I think that's why this is, and Bill has talked about this since spring. Like Ohio State cannot let Michigan just erase Marvin from the game. And so how can they adjust on their own? Ohio State offensively with slot Marv, we've seen him in the backfield. We've seen, the split back looks, and Marvin has been involved, and Emeka has been involved in that as well. Like using him on end arounds, pop passes, like whatever it is, you can't let that happen. But either way, there's still going to be opportunities for Emeka. Like wherever they line up Marvin, attention is going to go. So whether you're getting him 5 or 6 touches that you're just purely designing, the rest of the game is still an opportunity where Michigan is going to be accounting for him on the perimeter, and Emeka is free to run wild. But to your point, Doug, I don't know the best way because Ohio State has so many weapons. I don't know how you take them all away. And if they choose to just roll the dice and go, well, like Will Johnson, maybe he'll play out there one-on-one and take something away from Marvin. I mean, I would say good luck to you, but maybe that's the choice that they have to make because they're concerned about everybody else. I mean, I don't know what they're going to choose to do, what Jesse Minter wants to do, what Connor Stallions was cooking up for this game. I don't know. But I'm just as curious as you because I'm not sure that there is a defense that you can draw up to take them all away.
I do. One of the things I like about this Emeka anytime touchdown, Landis, is a running touchdown. Mm-hmm. That we saw them hand the ball off to Marvin in the red zone, and he got a rushing touchdown out of it. We've seen them use Emeka on crucial plays, and I can envision him maybe getting 2 or 3 carries in important spots and maybe cashing it that way.
Yeah, I think people have perhaps forgotten how dynamic Emeka can be with the ball in his hands because he did miss so much time, and then when he came back, he just wasn't himself for a couple of weeks. But he runs the ball like a running back. And the one cut he made last week against Minnesota on one of those pop passes he got was devastating to get out to the outside and then take it around the edge. I absolutely think Ohio State's going to get him involved in the running game this week. We saw them try to do it in short yardage against Notre Dame. Didn't work then. They came back to a different way of using him in short yardage against Minnesota twice, and it worked. I think that is a recipe they'll see if it can work against Michigan as well, especially when they get down in the red zone and like you don't have the quarterback run threat. Can you use somebody else to kind of even those numbers a little bit?
All right, those are our prop bets for the game. When we come back, one last Northern bet. We'll do that next on the Pick Show on the podcast. So noting here that Austin Ward is a cashing machine, up $124.03 on the year. I am down $105.68, and Landis is down $125.64. I felt like I was climbing back. Just a devastating 0 for 5 for me last week. Just wrong on everything. I almost had my Northern bet last week. Didn't Dylan Johnson for Washington almost score, and then he didn't.
He was
Right.
running into the end zone and fumbled the ball. Yeah.
So if he would have scored there, I would have cashed my Northern parlay on. But anyway, now I'm playing the Landis game. I'm playing the almost game. Congrats on your almost win that got you no money,
That's
Doug.
right. The idea was right.
Yeah, and your idea was right and also didn't win. So again, here we are, the happy losers, and now we'll go to our winning better, cashing machine, Austin Ward, with his Northern bet of the week, and I'm sure it has to do with corn. More corn!
It does. And I also had a ridiculously bad beat last week while rolling with Iowa. Had them under 32 and winning, covering 2.5. And then they punch in the touchdown in the last, 90 seconds of the game to go up 15-13. I get up to the post-game press conference room, and I was like, well, that's weird. They haven't put this money in my account yet because I wager real dollars on my pick that's on here. I'm putting my money where my mouth is, folks. And Iowa gets the extra point blocked. What are you doing? I can't even count on Iowa special teams to finish the deal for me. That was as painful as it gets. But guess what? I'm not worried about it. I'm going right back to the Ferentz factory. I'm taking Iowa.
What do they make there?
Money.
Relatives.
More children, and then more jobs for those children. It's a nepotism factory. It's anyway. I don't know why Iowa is an underdog at Nebraska. Nebraska is not good. Newsflash. So I had to take Iowa on this.
Iowa.
Excuse me? Are you talking about the champions of the West?
We're going to get a whole
Kings
week
of the
of
West?
this. Oh, Ohio State's going to play Iowa if they win. Oh, my God.
I mean,
Iowa talk.
I can't wait to see when that happens, what Austin's going to do.
Let's 1 week at a time, boys. That's all we can do. Iowa, I have to take them to win. Just the money line wasn't even good enough. I have Iowa in an SGP covering 2.5 and Nebraska's total under 10.5. That's plus 206 on DraftKings. I usually like a little bit more juice for my Iowa bets, but I couldn't quite get there. Nebraska scored 10 points 2 weeks ago and lost at home to Maryland. And Iowa this year has gone, they've held their opponents under 10 4 times, and that's 3 of the last 5 weeks. And then the other 2 weeks, which wouldn't win for me in this particular bet, was 12 and 13. Last 5 weeks, all opponents under 13 points. It's insane what they're doing. Now, yes, some of that is playing West teams who have anemic offenses. I get that. But Iowa is playing another one of those teams this week, and they're going to beat them by 3, and it'll probably be 12-3.
I might not be on the show next week if it's Ohio State, Iowa, and Austin. We're just talking about Iowa all week. I can't. Okay.
When Kings of the North launches, I want to be your Iowa expert. I don't want you to have to go find anybody else.
Austin is covering Iowa full time from Columbus and just cashing. All right, Landis, what are you almost going to win on this week?
This is my Big Ten West Goes bowling parlay. It's a 3-leg money line parlay. It is Nebraska money line against Iowa. It is Minnesota money line against Wisconsin, and it is Illinois money line against Northwestern, which gets all 3 winners to bowl eligibility, and 6 of the 7 teams in the terrible Big Ten West to bowl eligibility, which I find hilarious. If we have to spend time watching these teams, then the rest of America should have to too. So they're all going to go to bowl games when all 3 of these teams win, and the combination of those 3 money line bets is plus 434 on FanDuel.
Plus 434. And a reminder, if you either want to get on the Austin bandwagon and bet Iowa in that game, or you want to get on the Landis bandwagon and bet Nebraska, that's a Friday game. So don't get to Saturday morning and think, oh, I didn't get a chance to bet. So I am also living the dream here in the Big Ten. I called this my Big Ten Funder parlay because it's 4 unders.
Ooh,
it is
nice.
Penn State, Michigan State under 42.5. Wisconsin, Minnesota under 41.5, Maryland, Rutgers under 44.5, Iowa, Nebraska under 26.5, and that's plus 1252, 12-1 on FanDuel. And
that's
so
hitting, Doug. That is absolutely hitting.
I like those. Yeah.
You can just watch Big Ten football and hope nobody scores. Just think to yourself, why do I put myself through this? But at least I'm going to try to win money. So again, Austin is having a great year. Landis and I are trying to dig out of this, but you know what? Gambling's fun, but it's Ohio State Michigan week, so we are going to have everything covered through Thanksgiving, through Friday, and especially on Saturday. Austin, what's the plan as people are getting geared up when they wake up Saturday morning for what they can expect on the podcast?
Yep. Well, this is going to be awesome. I mean, we got the whole team heading up there to Ann Arbor. We'll have, as long as we can find a good spot and reliable Wi-Fi, we'll take the keys live and we'll get into the availability report with Berm and I. Might try and get something from the walk-in, the arrival on the bus and the tunnel and all that. No guarantee. It's going to be a dangerous situation in some respects, but we'll have all that normal pregame stuff as much as we can provide. If it's live, if we can make that happen, we will. Afterwards, we'll have snap judgments, and we'll do the notebook from the big house later on, and you guys will be there for an in-person in the big house version of the post-game show, which I imagine should be filled with plenty of interesting things to break down.
Yeah, you psyched to do the post-game show live from Ann Arbor, Landis?
I am psyched. TBD on where we do it from.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully it'll be up in the press box. Could be down on the field. Could be in a totally different town than Ann Arbor, depending on how things play out. So, yeah, it should be interesting.
So if you are an Ohio State fan going to the game, don't get in a fight. Don't get in a fight in a way that like ruins your experience, because this has a chance to be as good as any version of the game has ever been. And they've been doing this for 119 years, right? So like, have fun. And if you're sitting around at Thanksgiving with family members who are Ohio State fans, maybe who are Michigan fans, don't ruin your family over this game. Well, if you want to, you can. Family is annoying anyway, right? Like so, but don't get in a fight. Don't get arrested. Mostly don't get arrested. Don't steal signs. Don't sell vacuums. Don't get in fights. Everybody be safe and enjoy the weekend. Again, we're so grateful that you guys roll with us on this. We're so grateful that like we just get to cover interesting football. And this is going to be one of those, I think, that, you know, they might be interviewing people like us when we are very old and very gray and very wrinkled and saying, what was it like back in the day? Because this is history in the making, and we get to be a part of it with you guys. So thanks to Jeremy Birmingham for making this show look and sound good, as always. For Austin Ward and Bill Landis, I'm Doug Lesmerises. Happy Thanksgiving. And that was The Pick Show on the podcast.